Hi guys, it's Kelly Lativola here, and we're doing a video for Simon Says Stamp. This is the first video in the new series called What Would Kelly Make? And this is the technique video, so we're just going to be concentrating on showing you the actual technique, and for this one it's watercolor flowers. The parcel that I picked had the layered chrysanthemums. Difficult word to say for me. From Simon Says Stamp and Clearly Besotted, and then also the sugar skulls from Simon Says Stamp. So this one just spoke to me, and I really just pictured it in my head right away. So I'm going to be using some Distress ink, a number 2 brush, which is on the smaller side, just a small cup of water. I'm working on Canson watercolor paper and a Ranger craft mat. I keep a scrap of paper on the side there to stamp off on, and then I like to give myself a little palette to work with on the Ranger craft mat. So I just give myself just like a little smush of color from each of the Distress inks that I picked. For the flowers, I picked 2 colors, and then for the leaves, I picked 2 colors. So I'm going to do second generation stamping. I stamped off 1 time, and then you're just going to have to play around with it to see which Distress inks. You could use markers as well. That'll give you a lighter impression right off the gate. But for this red, I knew I was going to have to stamp off. For the leaves, I used Twisted Citron, and I didn't have to stamp off. So you're just going to have to see which, with the color that you're using, whether or not it's too dark to use the first impression. Here, we want to have a combination of what we call hard and soft edges. So a hard edge is when you take just a little bit of water, and you don't want a lot. You don't want it to be completely oversaturated, but you do want it to stay damp. So you'll see me sometimes I go back and add in a little bit of water. I want it to stay wet because this is how I'm going to add in the extra shading. But you're just going to go through for a hard edge and just outline what's already there. For a softer edge, I usually like to take some clean, clear water and just bring it up to the edge of the color, but not actually touch the color. Then I will move the paintbrush into the color from the opposite side and pull the color out into the clear water. Because I wanted these blooms to be really intense, it's hard to see how soft the edge can be. But if you don't want a ton of shading, if you want something that is really soft, then you don't have to add as much pigment as I'm going to. You really can kind of make these your own. Once you have everything added in, I just pick up from that palette and start dropping in color where it's going to be the darkest. Something important to note is if your brush is not as wet as the paper, then you're going to pick up water. You're going to suck up water into your paintbrush versus putting color down. So even though you don't want to water down that color, and I completely understand, you definitely do want to have enough water in there that you're depositing color into your flower versus just picking it up. So I'm using just a little bit of the aged mahogany in the darkest parts of the flower, and that's just going to give it a little bit of depth. So you can see like there's some soft edges and there's some darker colors. I went ahead and heat dried it. You can absolutely just leave this to dry on its own. I am just impatient. So here I'm going to add in the leaves. I'm going to stamp it down. This is first generation because the color's so light. And then one of the tricks that I like to use with this, because there isn't really any way to mask it, is I will ink up my full stamp and then use a damp baby wipe or just my finger to wipe away the color where I don't want it. I'm going to do the leaves the same way, and then you'll see me adding in the line of clean, clear water just on the outside edge of the flower, or I'm sorry, of the leaf, so that it kind of bleeds out. And then I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the darker green, the mowed lawn, and add that into just the center parts of it. It's a really easy technique to do. And so this is basically the entire technique video. If you would like to see how I made the entire card, which will also feature this technique, and then the copa coloring of the sugar skulls, that will be in the second video for the series, which you will find below. And I hope that you will join me there to see how the whole thing is made. Thank you so much for joining me.